You're watching The Breakfast Club.
Morning, everybody. It's DJ NV Angela Yee, Charlamagne the God. We are The Breakfast Club. We got a special guest in the building. Goes by the name of Vic Mensa.
Vic Mensa.
What's going on?
Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Congratulations on the album.
Thank you.
I cannot lie, Vic. You have not let me down yet, man. I listened to the Autobiography this morning. Very dope album.
Thank you,
man.
man.
Really, really, really good.
Thank you, man.
Yeah, Jay-Z called you a once-in-a-lifetime artist. That's a lot of pressure. So how did you take that?
Well, you know, I've been studying Hov, same way I've been studying Nas and studying Kanye far before I ever met these people. Mm-hmm. So to have that support and that validation from Hov is really inspiring to me. But it doesn't feel so much like pressure because that's the cloth of music that I was always intending to be a part of.
You could tell.
But what made because you're pretty young, so what made you focus, or I should say, listen to Nas and Jay in that era of music?
Well, I started listening to hip hop through KRS-One. I didn't like hip hop,
which is surprising because you're a young guy. Most young guys,
right?
Are you 24 now?
Yeah.
Most young guys wouldn't know a KRS-One song.
That was when I was like 11 years old. I didn't like hip hop before that. I didn't really understand. I didn't understand the attitude, and I didn't understand the aggression. Mm-hmm. And then around the time when I was 11 years old, and then, you know, I start getting pushed around by the police, then I'm like, I identify with this. You know, I understand this. And I found KRS-One step into a world through a Zoo York skateboarding mixtape, you know what I mean, with the legend Harold Hunter, Legends Never Die, on it. And, you know, he was like, I'm not saying I'm the best, I'm sorry you lied, I'm number 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Yeah. And I just thought that was nice, you know, and that was kind of like, that was the first hip hop song that I fully connected to myself. So being that I was starting like really, really at the genesis and at the roots of hip hop, then I always been just a student of things that I'm interested in. So that's when I started to like kind of trace the lineage and really like build my, you know, my mental Rolodex from square one, and listening to Public Enemy and NWA and, you know, Grandmaster Flash and all that, and getting up to Hov and
That's
Nas.
dope. I don't ever hear MCs do that. Like
really
do their homework on the music.
Yeah, and for Vic to name an artist from the 80s, because most everybody starts at the 90s with the Jays, the Nas, Biggs, Pacs. You said on the album, too, when you was like 11 or 12, you realized the difference between white and black because a police officer slammed you on your
right.
back. How did you know that was a race thing then?
That's all in the same time that I'm really starting to understand the aggression in hip hop, because before that point in time I never felt so racial. I felt kind of in between two worlds, and at that point in time is when I started to realize that I'm a black man in America, or I was growing into a black man in America, and I have this certain label and brand on me. Because, I mean, from my point of view, black and white, these are not real labels. These are not real categories of human beings. You know, you're not black, the microphone's black. Mm-hmm. And my boy Cody's not white. You know what I mean? Like, this is white, or the wall is white. Gotcha. It's not real.
You're saying it's social construct.
It's a social construct that was put together so that we wouldn't focus on, you know, the real oppressor and who's really in charge, and it's usually about a dollar bill. So, but around that time when I was 11 years old, and I'm being singled out by police, and I'm being harassed and beat up by police, and they're asking me, you remember us from yesterday? You ran away from us. I'm like, no, I didn't. They're like, well, do you have a twin brother? And I'm like, do I just look the same as a bunch of other niggas that are around here? So clearly I'm not in on something that's going on. So when that started to be a reality of mine, that's when I started to realize that no matter how I felt like, you know, in my home, that when I stepped outside of my home, it was on for me.
What did your parents tell you about the police growing up?
My dad would always just tell me, around that time really is when we started to have those conversations, and my dad is really telling me that you're a target for the police, and they will expect certain things from you, and consider you to be a criminal, and you have to move accordingly.
Wow. Now, on Heaven on Earth, you said like you sat in the bathroom with a bottle of Henny and a gun. Did you really try to kill yourself?
I had the gun. I was in a dark place, and I had to write about it really to be able to cope with a lot of things that I was dealing with or had dealt with, and this album was my way of doing that. That's why I called it the autobiography, is because it was me pulling no punches and really detailing my story and being transparent and being vulnerable and being honest about the things that I've experienced, so that I can grow from them, I can learn from them, and also with the hope that I can give other people, maybe the courage or show them that it's all right to come to terms with your past.
What put you in that dark place? Because I'm sure there's a lot of kids in a dark place and don't know how to get out of it,
You said you felt like a hypocrite. That was interesting.
I felt like a hypocrite, honestly, because I was just growing up in front of everybody. And I got a lot of people watching me and paying attention to me, and my every move can be detailed. So as I'm dealing with the things that I kind of detail in this album, and tumultuous, toxic relationship and toxic relationship with myself and with drugs, and my mental is kind of spiraling out of control, I'm still on the world stage. And I'm still releasing music and performing music, and I felt like a hypocrite because I feel as if when you know better, you got a duty to do better. And I started to fall into cliches and fall into some of these, like, just insert rap line here kind of blueprints that people follow, about lean and this and that. And I'm performing this music still, even though I'm not fully in it. My heart is not in it, but I'm still in Germany performing this music for 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 people at a music festival, and I felt like a hypocrite going back to the green room, like looking in the mirror and knowing that I know better than the things that I'm saying on this stage. And that was difficult for me because I've always, since I started rapping, I've always really lived my life through rap, and rap has been my way of reflecting my real life experience. So when my music wasn't aligned with where I felt my heart was, it was a difficult time for me because I'm still having to perform this every night, and this is still my livelihood, but it didn't feel true to me, and I had to come to a place where I could reflect on my truths in a really, really transparent way, so that I could make music I could stand on and believe in.
Now, you mentioned lean. We talk to a lot of artists, and they say that sometimes the drugs help them make music, make better music. Did you feel like, were you ever nervous that when you stopped, you wouldn't?
No. I just was, like I said, growing up in front of a lot of people, and different things work differently for different people. For me, I found that drugs is not the way for me to be creative, honestly, and I was kind of putting a lot of pressure on my mental, and you got to take care of yourself first, and you got to take care of your mind, and that was something that I didn't fully realize. They tell you don't do drugs when you're a kid in school, but I don't think that mental health is so much of a thorough conversation. And we talked about this last time, and specifically in the Black community, this is not a thorough conversation to where you even really understand that when you're putting these pressures on your mind with constant drug use, what it's doing to you. And you barely are learning what serotonin is in high school, So I'm 19, I'm 20 years old, and everybody's doing Molly, everybody's on the Molly, and I'm like, okay, this what we on? All right. And then I kind of start to go down that path, and it kind of just, it's like a snowball effect, and it starts to get bigger and bigger and move faster and faster before I even really know what's going on.
Right.
And that was difficult for me creatively.
That's crazy because we were just talking about Lamar Odom did this interview with the Players Tribune, and he talked about how he got hooked on cocaine, and it started off as something that was controllable to him, kind of every now and then, but then it spiraled into this like every single day thing that he was doing, and that's when he woke up in the hospital. So
you think being a black man from Chicago, a lot of it could be self-medication because of all the trauma you experienced at a young age?
100%, and that's something I tried to explore in this album was the concept of self-medication and how we're trying to escape from so many different things through our, use of the weed and the backwoods and the lean and the Xans and the Percocets. And, niggas ain't Molly Percocet because it's all good,
Right. Absolutely.
Not because they're waking up like in a brilliant situation, like with a lot of hope for the future. And so I definitely was just caught up in the spiral of that. And I think a lot of people in a lot of places are dealing with many things from an escapist kind of point of view. And that's why I'm seeing my homies like lose years of their lives to the Xanax. And, we're seeing people get hooked on Percocets and then end up overdosing on heroin. They're trying to self-medicate.
Right.
And that's exactly what I was doing.
you said you got kicked out of kindergarten. How does somebody get, like, what could a kindergartner do that they
Oh, well,
get
that's
kicked
easy
out
to
of
get kicked
school?
out of kindergarten.
Really?
Believe me. Yeah, hell
A
yeah.
little
You got
kid?
kicked out of kindergarten?
My son did, man. You get kicked out of kindergarten.
What did you
easily.
get kicked out of kindergarten for?
Fighting.
Word up, man. No, you know what happened was I actually moved out of the district that, like a block out of the district I lived in. And it turned out to later be not legal what they did to like kick a kid out in the middle of the year for moving out the district. But I was already having issues in school. I told that story kind of to illustrate the way that I feel like the school system has often failed Black and Latino and just minority youth, but specifically African American youth. And the school system often labels you know, as a problem or as a behavioral issue because they don't understand how to deal with you. And I experienced that. I was in kindergarten and I'm like, I didn't like to share, I think, you know?
Oh, come on. Nobody.
And I didn't like sharing. And
Kids
then,
never like sharing.
and
You
then
have
they
to teach
sent me
them.
to this special class, and I'm looking around and everybody's in wheelchairs.
Like, so
like,
they put you in the slow class.
yeah, everybody's
they did that to me too.
everybody's in
Charlamagne might
wheelchairs.
have deserved it, though.
And I'm like,
Definitely.
I might have deserved it too, but you could tell I'm not slow. Charlamagne's not slow.
They did it to me in high school.
They just don't.
All right.
It wasn't even kindergarten. They put me high school. But I failed some test. They had me right in there with them kids, yo. I was like, I know I don't belong here with these guys.
Exactly. I'm like, I know I don't belong in here. We playing Go Fish. Everybody's in wheelchairs. And you know, I told that story, like I said, just to illustrate the way that I feel like school system very often fails us. And even past that, this album for me was about examining, dissecting, and unpacking my past so that I could understand my present and have a vision for my future.
Yeah, Angela Yee asked me this morning. She said, "Is this his like first project that's considered an album?" And I said, "I don't know." Because I know on there's a lot
You've had
going
projects
on.
out.
Yeah.
EP.
But this
it's
one
like an official album.
Yeah, this feels like a debut album. Like if you don't know anything about
Right.
Vic Mensa, you can put this on and be like, this is who Vic Mensa is.
And some of the songs were on the EP, right? Or
A couple of them, yeah, one or two. I wanted to really make this feel like my debut album because it's honestly what it is, and this is my major label, full form, full length debut album, the first piece of music that I'm really selling and campaigning in a major way. And you know, past sales or anything like that, I'm somebody that discovered Biggie and Pac and Common and Hove 10 years after they came out. You know, I started listening to that music in about 03, you know, and I wanted to make an album that if we're in 2017 now, that a kid that is, you know, coming up and first stumbles across hip hop music or my music in 2027, that this album is an introduction for that person into my catalog. And that's why I decided to really be thorough with the stories that I told and make sure that the through line existed and I was giving context, and it makes a lot of sense because I wanted to be around for a long time.
One story that you told that was very vivid, and it kind of reminds me of A Story to Tell by Biggie. You had your own story to tell, and that was Homewrecker.
Oh, that was interesting.
I was definitely inspired by A Story to Tell.
It was that vibe, even though it was a whole different story. But basically, I was going to bring this up. You were cheating, I guess, on your girl, and then your girl came to the door, and you opened the door and let her in, and then all hell broke loose.
Yeah, well, we weren't together at that point in time, but I'm not going to sit up here in front like I was a saint when we were together. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it was a situation that went down in a major way, and
so you probably were still texting her like, oh, I miss you, I love you, I still want to be with you.
No, it wasn't like that.
Oh, it wasn't? Okay.
No, it wasn't like that. But
when she caught you red-handed, it verified everything she already had thought.
But they weren't together.
Word up. We weren't together, but honestly, I was coming from oftentimes coming from a pretty hurt place myself, and I was hurting people around me.
Hurt people.
Yeah, hurt people, and that's something that created a lot of static, a lot of drama in my life, and a lot of guilt also. Because it was taxing in the same way that I speak about music that I was making and didn't believe in the lyrics, and I'm performing this for large audiences. I'm also at the same time like telling somebody that I actually love things that are untrue, and it made me feel so guilty because I'm over here and truth is like that's my number one priority. Right. And I was having so much truth in my life and in my mission, except in two of the most important stages that I could be on, which was my music and my lyrics, and in my relationships with people, with my woman. I think that a lot of times that we view like lying to our girlfriend as not really counting,
Yeah, because we say things like we lying to you because we love you.
Right. It's not the same as like, I always felt like, well, I would never lie to my homie, Right. But that was my homie, and I was lying to her, and that was really breaking me down inside, and also her, so that once the relationship kind of deteriorated, then this situation happened, and I really depict the situation on the album cover, which you see me like in the middle of a trashed apartment with.
Said she was pulling the stove out the wall.
Stove came out the wall.
I thought you was just writing raps and throwing the papers to the side. That's what I thought that
was. I was, but if you kind of look a little bit closer, like the kitchen table is flipped in there, and there's like broken glass on the ground, and I wanted to make it clear that all these papers on the side and everything that I was crumpling up and writing, it was kind of like I was sitting in the middle of this chaos and writing about it. Because even when the situation happened with Homewrecker, later, my ex-girlfriend, when we were speaking kind of about what just happened, she was like, she saw the moment at which I realized that I didn't have to get on this flight that I had scheduled, because I was supposed to go to New York and do like some TV show with A$AP Rocky or something, and I didn't really want to do it, and I didn't have to get on this flight, and I was so excited kind of like to write a song about what was going on. So it's a moment in time when she just pulled the stove out the wall, and then I'm like, yo, and then I'm like catching a breath, and I'm like, man, this finna be a good ass song.
That's crazy. And she wanted to fight the other girl too, man.
Yeah, that was hectic. That was hectic and just like difficult for me to like come to terms with. You love somebody, you don't want to see them in that light.
And you caused it.
And I caused it, and I'm like completely aware of that. And just a major theme of this album is accountability. on my part, and perspective and empathy. And I wanted to really demonstrate through these different situations how many sides there can be to a story and to a person. So in that particular story that we're speaking about in the song Homewrecker, you know, it would seem as if she's kind of the antagonist or something, but I tried to really display it in a way that lets you know that I recognize that I was kind of the antagonist and I was the one that caused this to happen. And you know, this is a good woman, man, that like was pushed to the brink, and like, you know, love and make you do crazy things.
We could all be free. You say we could all be free if we only knew we were slaves to the pains of each other. Elaborate on that a little bit.
That line is kind of an homage subconsciously to Harriet Tubman when she said, I could have freed more if they only knew they were slaves. Yeah. And it's kind of how I feel about the state of the world today. I feel like, as you said, hurt people. And there are a lot of people in pain right now, and they're dealing with it through opioids and Percocets and fentanyl and heroin in middle America, and we're dealing with it through lean and our weed and our Molly and flats in the hood, and we're also taking out our pain on other people, and we're being directed by the powers that be to look at our neighbors and the people to the south in Mexico or across the ocean in the Middle East and Muslims as the reason of our suffering, you know? And it's a lie. I wanted to make this album and really make that song specifically to kind of give a different vision for the future that's not so hateful, because I feel that we're so much more alike than we are different, and human beings are so similar. You know, every human being, regardless of where you're from, we all come from Africa at the root of it, and you know, our DNA is like 99.99999% the same. There's only small changes to make me and you. But we get led to believe that we're so very different, and that leads us to a place of hate, and it's really detrimental to growth. And the only way that we can really face the powers that be and the problems that we live with head on is by unifying. And so that was a song I wrote to paint a picture of unity in a way that could help us all.
Now, Jay-Z has been supporting you heavily. How did you get
He's on Rock Nation.
Yeah, I know that, but there's a lot of artists on Rock Nation.
That is true. That is true. That is true. That is true. That is very true. That is very true.
How did you and Jay's relationship get so good?
Hov has just been somebody that has helped me to grow as a man, and the way that I approach making music is so reflective of just my real life and my real experiences that's in turn come to be just very influential to my music. And he was an executive producer on this album, and somebody that really heard the album from its creation and heard different songs come in the mix, heard songs come and go, and you know, would tell me what he thought about what I was doing and what he thought about this record and how I might be able to get my point across maybe more succinctly. Or he was somebody that really helped me with continuity and making the storyline and the arc of this album be, how can I say, very continuous and cohesive. That's the word I was looking for. So if I was hovering too much on one point, then he was like, you know, you don't really need that song. You don't need that song. Let's get to the point. And that's a blessing for me, because I've been a super fan of Hov music before I ever met him. And that's one of those relationships where I feel like I knew him before I met him, just because I've been so in depth with the music, and that's what rap is. I feel at its best is like you may really know a person, even though Pac and Biggie passed. I feel as if in a certain way, in a certain sense, I know those men, and that's the same way that I knew Hov before meeting him. He's really that person that he is on record, and I know I learned a lot from him growing up, just about the world. You know, I didn't know that you were 6 years old in first grade until he said he got more sixes in first grade.
Right.
You know, that never occurred to me. Right. So then, working with him, he's imparting this wisdom on me, just man to man, and not just through lyrics. It's the same way as learning things from him musically.
And he told you to pull a bar, right? Because it said you dissed some rapper on OMG, which is a very tough tune, very Wu-Tang instrumental.
Thank you, man.
And he told you to pull the bar?
Yeah. You know, he was, he has a way of saying things that are like deep in very little words, saying a lot by saying a little. And he just told me that what you're doing won't work out in your favor if you know in your heart it's not right. The universe only works one way. And I didn't want to change my lyric, you know. I don't think that I've ever changed a lyric that anybody told me to change. I'm pretty stubborn in that way, just because I think about the things I say, and I don't say them unless I mean them. And once he put that game in my ear, though, it kind of made me start thinking and gave me perspective to anything that I was doing that could bring down another young black man, regardless of music, whether I like the music or I agree with it culturally. At the end of the day, there's so many people that want to keep people like us out of the room, and they don't want us to have a platform. They don't want us to have a road to success. They don't want us to be getting money, and I don't want to be one of those people holding back or, you know, restricting another young black man's access to his dreams, because why would I, you know?
So was it just that you didn't like his music, but you had no personal issue?
Yeah, I had no personal issue, and I had to come to a place where I could really just be putting strictly positive energy into the world, regardless of what I think about the music. Because I could be a hater about music 100%, because I really care, though. And it's not because I want to be a contrarian. It's because I care, and music means so much to me, and lyricism means a lot to me, and it doesn't mean a lot to a lot of other people.
Right. We all have our different opinions on what we like, and we all like different things at different times.
I always wondered why Yachty, though. Because I'm like, why is Vic even throwing a shot at Yachty?
It just rhymed with Illuminati.
I'm like, that don't even
and he was, you know, and that made me think about it. I was like, this is not right. You know, it just rhymes with Illuminati. That's the only reason I wrote the line. You know.
So when Jay told you to take the line about yada yada, did you say, hey, you wrote Takeover? You wrote Super Ugly, Jay?
But those were personal problems.
No, I just didn't. I just didn't do it. You know, I tried and I thought about it, and I was like, I tried to think of something that I could replace it with, and I wasn't into it. So I hit him up, and I'm like, you know, thank you, man, but I'm gonna stick with this line. And then he gave me just that piece of information that made me think. And Coach K is my man. You know, I go back with Coach K. Coach K is somebody that showed me love early. Coach K introduced me to No ID. Coach K flew No ID from LA out to Chicago to come see me and my group when I was 17 years old. That's the first time I met No ID. And it didn't really occur to me. I think that it's easy to get maybe disillusioned in your own bubble and like bouncing your ideas off of people that are in your circle and kind of agree with you. And forget the way that other people may be impacted by your actions. And so when I spoke to Coach K, and I'm like, man, you know, I don't want to be holding Coach K back or trying to take food off his plate. That's my man. And I also don't want to be the guy trying to take food off another young brother's plate,
Right.
you know?
Gotcha.
And that's OMG don't need it. That record is
It
tough.
just doesn't need it. It's not necessary. And the mission and the purpose that I have specifically on this album is far more about me and about my journey and introspection than it is about, you know, taking shots or headlines for like sensational reasons. It's not that type of record. It's not one of those records where it's based on who's on this song and who's on that song, and it's a who's who list of rappers doing verses on the album. I wanted to approach it like an Illmatic perspective, and I always thought it was ill how Nas had that bar where he was like, my first solo album had no famous guest appearances or something like that. I always thought that was ill because
the outcome, I'm crowned the best lyricist. Yep.
Word, because you really grew to appreciate and understand Nas from Illmatic because it was really just about him and his verses, and he really held his own on every single record, working with producers like Pete Rock and Q-Tip, and I'm working with producers like No ID and Pharrell, and it's all me on these verses. I wanted you to come to understand me and know me as a person and as an artist and as a man from this album.
You really use your music for activism, man, and that's dope because that's not a popular thing to do. But why do you choose to do that? I guess I kind of know now because you said you felt like you weren't doing what you were supposed to do with the music.
I'm cut from that cloth, and I've been lucky enough to have a lot of wisdom imparted upon me in my life. I have a friend named Aja Monet, who's just an amazing poet and activist and organizer and just a great person. It's like was a mentor to me early on. She's from New York. Her pops is in the Last Poets. She was like New Eurekan Cafe, spoken word, you know, folklore legend. And she came to Chicago when I was around 16, and she gave me Malcolm X Autobiography, you know, and just turned my mind out to like a different way of looking at myself and knowledge yourself. And I know that's like an old school thing, you know.
Hell no, we got to bring that back.
We got to bring that back in a
Yes.
major way because I feel like that we're down a path of self-destruction, like as a culture, very often because we're not as people having knowledge of self. I remember when I read something that Mos Def said that somebody asked him about the state of hip hop at a point in time, and he was like, hip hop is gonna reflect where we are as a people, and I think that when you look at some of the trends in hip hop and it just being kind of empty, and you know there's a lot of self-medication going on, and we're not getting to the bottom of it. It's just reflecting where we are as a people because we've kind of in certain ways lost like sense of purpose and a knowledge of self. Like knowing who you are is so important to knowing where you want to go and where you can go.
That's what my whole book is about. Knowledge of self.
Word up.
So you don't want to drag DJ Academics around Chicago anymore?
I don't want to drag DJ Academics around Chicago. I think that what he's kind of come to prominence for is phony, and I think he's a phony, and he's not even a DJ. But but it's not really, you know,
not a DJ?
It's not my
I
mission.
didn't know that.
It's not my mission to like, you know, to destroy DJ Academics. I don't really think he has a place in the culture past being a parasite, but I'm not like waking up thinking about him. I don't really give a fuck about him.
You know, I wanted to salute you too, man, because a lot of things you do in the community you don't promote. Like when everything was going on with the Dakota Access Pipeline, you was out there. I never saw you post about it. I never saw you say anything about it. But I had people on the ground that was like, yo, Vic Mensa's out here. And I'm like, really?
Man, I think that in my life, I have just kind of been called to certain struggles and certain situations by a sense of necessity. And I remember in the last year just I was in London doing Wireless Festival, and Philando Castile got shot on camera.
Alton Sterling was
within 2 days of Alton Sterling.
Because we were off that week.
Yeah.
So this is like basically almost just a year ago, like 1 year ago. And Philando Castile got shot, and it was like so graphic. Alton Sterling got killed, and it was so graphic. And I was sitting in a hotel room in London, and I was like just fucking distraught, you know? I'm trying to sleep it off. I'm having nightmares of like police shooting me in the alley, and I wake up and I just like start like crying hysterically, and I'm feeling like I'm just feeling doubt and feeling dirty for my heritage and feeling like everything, all of these ideas of what it means to be black that, you know, have been created by like imperialistic, just like exploitative American culture, and are weighing so heavy on me. And I felt, I really just felt ashamed of, like, for this brief moment, you know, I felt ashamed of like my skin, and I felt ashamed of my heritage. And I called my homegirl Aja that I just mentioned, and she was able to like bring me back to center. And, you know, I know better than that. You know, I know that it doesn't mean I'm like a criminal, or I'm a thief or and a liar because I'm of African descent. I know that, but it can weigh heavy on you. You know,
society can make you feel that way sometimes.
You know, it can weigh heavy on you when you see so much struggle and so much pain. And so I often feel as if I have like a responsibility to, in whatever ways I can, lend a hand to the struggle of oppressed people. And the Native American people are the most oppressed group in America, and frankly one of the most oppressed groups in the world. And when I got down there to Standing Rock, I'm seeing so many parallels between the Black American experience and the Native American experience. And I'm seeing also so many unified movements between our cultures, and a lot of the people that I met down there were mixed Black and Native. And it never really occurred to me kind of before that time how alike we were and how alike our fight was. But I didn't go down there or go to Flint, Michigan, or go to Baton Rouge because I wanted people to know about it, you know, because know about me. I wanted people to know about the situations and to give visibility, and like I said, lend a hand in any way that I can. But it would be disingenuous if I was doing those things for like a photo op and like a press release, you know what I mean?
Right. How do the cops treat you now in Chicago? I'm sure everybody knows you, and I know you've had some situations. You're on probation now, right? But how do you feel about the cops now? How do they treat you now that you're a celebrity in Chicago?
Well, you know, cops don't treat me that great. They never did. But
like, are they angry because you're speaking out?
Yeah, you know, I was doing Lollapalooza last summer, and I had a song called 16 Shots, and it was like, you know, very vocal about police brutality and kind of like punching back and fighting back against it. And there were cops that were at Lollapalooza that were telling people like, don't go to Vic Mensa's set, boycott Vic Mensa's set. I've had issues trying to film videos in the city and get permits in the city. But at the end of the day, I'm more so focused on the system than I am focused on every individual police officer. Right. Because it's a fallacy to think that these are just bad eggs in a well-oiled machine when you see these police that are killing us every other week, every week, and being released, and they say, you know, these are just like bad seeds. It's not true. It's a bad system, but not every person within that system is a bad person. Everybody's got a job. They got to make a living. You know, they got to support themselves and support their families. So I'm not approaching police from a standpoint of, you know, I hate you all. It's just I hate crooked cops, and I hate the system that allows these crooked cops to kill us and nobody gets convicted. You can't tell me not one of these police officers has committed a crime. You can't tell me not one of these situations has been a homicide, a first-degree homicide, first-degree murder. But there is no record of convictions for first-degree murder, for murder in general. If at the very most, it's gonna be like manslaughter or something. When you shoot a kid 16 times and we watch you unload the clip and come over and kick him once it's all finished, that's not manslaughter. That's a homicide, man. That's a murder, man. And they're not being held accountable for what they're doing. So that's what I don't respect. It's like it's a system of validation and the code of blue and the wall of blue, whatever they call it, where they gotta protect their own, you know, before viewing us as people. That's what I have a problem with.
This is my final question, man. You and Chance got to get cool again.
We've been talking, man.
Y'all have to.
100%. And you know, I feel like that's also a part of my journey is putting this positive energy into the world. Chance is my brother. We grew up together, and if you have a brother, if you've ever had a brother, you know brothers fight, man. Like that happens. And you know, especially growing up and everybody is there to watch it. And that's what I'm unpacking in this album is like so many situations that were, you know, hectic and toxic, but as life can be sometimes, and we're just like kind of fueled to grow even bigger and badder through having so many eyes on it. And I feel like at times that's been the relationship with me and Chance, because, you know, we came up together from being 14 years old and, you know, recording some of our first records and raps ever and past rap, just you know, navigating the city of Chicago and coming into our own as men in a major way. Like
brothers like you not supposed to be
next to each other.
Like brothers
we
like
ain't
you not
supposed to
have
be.
issue.
The city needed. The city need us to be unified, and that's the place that I'm at. And
black people need y'all to be unified.
100%.
Y'all two can create change together.
100%. And I think that, you know, both Chance and I have always had a perspective on the community that really wanted to see growth and change. And we come from a creative circle that has always been very progressive and like unique and experimental and also socially conscious. And I feel like socially conscious, like conscious rap or whatever, is like has grown to be something that's like a, you know, a label that's not always positive. But I think that's something that we've both kind of owned and like and accepted and really pushed as being like a part of the brand. Both of us separately and specifically have, you know, just been like, yeah, we conscious, you know?
Right, absolutely.
Like we're awake, we're not asleep. Niggas is sleeping.
Y'all made it cool.
Yeah, niggas is sleeping, man. It's like you either woke or you asleep.
Right.
And I'm woke. He woke. So we gotta be unified.
There you have it. Well, we appreciate
Vic
you
Mensa,
joining us.
man. Whenever you mad at any of these young rappers and you like rap is so whack and hip hop is so whack and these kids don't know something, turn on some Vic Mensa.
There you go.
The
Well, Vic
autobiography
Mensa-
out now.
That's right. It's the Breakfast Club.
Autobiography in streets now.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you guys for having me.
Breakfast Club, good morning.